How the government helps investors buy mobile home parks and raise rent and evict people. And so I found this article to be interesting because when I was looking for a house, I also was told by a real estate agent that maybe I'd be um, also open to looking at manufactured homes. So I guess mobile park homes or mobile homes are considered manufactured homes. It looked to me that's what they were, like a large size mobile home, and it was like not in the ground, embedded in the ground, but it was on a flat foundation that was like a slab. And so this right here, this was in 2021, but it was recent. It was in December on the 18th. And so there's been a lot of issues with eviction and a lot of issues with rent relief and people trying to find, secure places to live. And so you have a woman here, and I believe there's a video, like a listening video attached to it. So this woman, her name is Mary Hunt. She makes $10 an hour driving people to doctor appointments. And she faces eviction from her manufactured home park. And this is in Swartz Creek, Michigan. Okay, so this was updated on the 20th. And so money is tight. So this is similar to what a lot of people, different people are going through, but this is in regard to people that are in mobile park homes, which I found this to be interesting because in a mobile park home, you pay for the space. And even if you paid for the home and you paid it off, you still pay for the space. So you're still left paying for something, but you can't own these homes. But people oftentimes they face problems when they're in these homes as well. So it says that Mary Hunt's money is tight and she often has to decide which bills to pay on time, the heat, the car loan, or the phone bill. And so many people are in this situation, but she's been able to scrape by for more than 30 years living in the mobile park home in Swartz Creek, Michigan. And so she owns her home outright. So she's an owner of this home, but she needs to pay the monthly lot rent. So there we go. To the park for the little patch of land that it sits on. So she had to pay that space. Now, what I was told by a real estate agent or people that are involved with the homes, if you don't pay that space rent, then you could lose that home even though you paid for that home. And so I guess it'll go into detail about this, which I was thinking, wow, that's crazy. I guess it's just the same thing as if you pay for your home if it's detached and it's not a mobile home. Let's say you pay for that home, you've been in that home for years, but you don't pay the taxes on it. The IRS can take that home away from you if you're delinquent in the taxes, I believe. That's what I was told. So it's like you're not really off the hook completely. And according to the city and what's going on in your city, if you live in a certain neighborhood, that home, the taxes can go up depending on what they build, what they put around in that city, in that area, because you pay for that as a taxpayer when you live in that home. So you're just really not off the hook. And then two, if you want to get things added onto the home or taken off the home, depending on where you live, your state, and what their rules are in that city, there are zoning laws, there's permits that you have to get. So there, even though, people want this American dream, they want to claim to be this homeowner, you still are really not off the hook. And so I guess that's the reason why when people move to some areas, they're looking for places where they're able to do more things with their home or maybe pay less taxes or maybe they don't have these stipulations. But everywhere you go, there's going to be something that you're going to be faced with as a homeowner. And so says that this woman right here, Mary Hunt, she owns her manufactured home. So she needs to pay her lot rent. And so the managers on the park, and some of these mobile homes will have like a manager that has an office. So it's a couple named Stan and Nancy who used to live right there. And so I would call them up and say, hey, look, I've got half the rent or the space rent. And so that's what Mary Hunt would say to them. So I'll bring the rest of it to you next week or whatever. So Stan and Nancy would say, okay. So she could make it work. So even I said earning, she was just earning like $10 an hour at her job, driving elderly patients to their doctor appointments. But a few years ago, Stan and Nancy, they retired as the local landowners and sold the park. So this is where the problems come in at. So a lot of times it's just like rental units when there's a management company and the owner he decides, I'm going to get another management company to deal with whatever's going on in that building, then the rules start to change. And so it's just like this mobile park home. It's the same thing, now you got different people that want to take over a new management. And so she could make it work. She was just making $10 an hour on her job, and so she was doing this driving people to their doctor's appointments. And so a few years ago, Stan and Nancy, they decided to sell the mobile park home. And Hunt, who she is 50 years old, she learned that her new landlords was out of state. So these people are out of state. So they're very far removed from what goes on into the park where these people live. So their company is a business. And you know what happens when you got these management places that operate like a business. They don't have any specific attachment to the people that are living there. They operate it as a business, and that's how you're going to be treated. And so when they bought this mobile park home, they operated as a business and buying mobile park homes. And that was what their main focus was. So these days, that's not unusual. It's a generation of mom and pop owners of mobile park home parks that they're starting to retire and looking to sell these homes. All right. So that's what's happening because things are changing. So now these investors are coming in and their companies and they're swooping up these mobile park home areas. So they buy up all the parks and they raise the fees, they raise the rents, and for the land that's under the homes, and then they begin to start evicting the people who can't pay. Even though you pay for your home, the space rent you owe, if you can't pay it, they can still kick you out of that home. Isn't that crazy? But yeah, it happens. And so it says that when they raise these fees, they raise the rent and the land under the homes and evict the people that can't pay, the housing advocates say it's a disturbing trend that's going on, that's happening across the country. It's much like when we live in these apartment buildings, these management companies, they operate like a business. And so they don't have anything invested in the people there. They're not your relatives. They're not your close loved ones or friends. They operate it as a business as such. And so if you don't have the money, if you didn't make some kind of arrangement to try to show them that you're going to pay this back rent for the, what happened during this COVID, then you can get kicked out. So if you don't have rent relief, something on back burner to show that you're doing something, if they find out that you're doing criminal activity, eventually that's going to run out because, that doesn't always last. And then if you have these little jobs that maybe the jobs are kind of funny and you working today and tomorrow you're not working or whatever, we're not talking about people who are taking vacation because they were on a holiday break. We're talking about people who your stability is not really that great. 1 minute they got you working and the next minute you're not working no more. Are you shifting from job to job? That's probably not a good idea either. So what's more, these companies are getting help doing that from billions of dollars worth of low interest rate loans. They're backed by the federal government. So this is what's really scary. This is what's happening in the home market. So you guys listen up. So the volume of the financing has risen sharply in the recent years. So this trend is hurting the homeowners who can at least least afford it, who can least afford it. And so these are people who are really probably living on fixed incomes. They're at an age where they can't just like go out, they're not real young, like they could just go out and get these new gig jobs and make all this money, you know. And from what I'm hearing, some of those jobs are not always very secure. It's, one minute you might be making some money, the next minute you gone, so we hear all the stories about that. And so it says that the volume of this financing has risen sharply in the recent years, so the trend is hurting these homeowners. And so millions of Americans owning homes and mobile park homes has been affected by this, and affordable way to has been an affordable way to keep a roof over their head. That's why they pick these mobile park homes. But in recent times, that's changing. So families living in them make around like maybe 32,000 a year. Okay, so in Hunt's case, Mary Hunt, the new owner is a real estate investment firm named Haven Park Communities. So since 2017, it has raised her rent, and the fees have risen over time. So from less than 350 per month to about 480. So just think about that. It just keeps rising. So, that's what they're about. And so this is a real big problem. And so as problematic for Mary Hunt, Haven Park is quick to file the eviction. So they're quick to just file these evictions on these people who they basically will be homeless. They don't have anywhere else to go. They put all their life savings and everything into those homes. And so she says that the company wouldn't be flexible with her and take partial rent payments. And that's the way Stan and Nancy would do it. And that was the previous owners because they were more mom and pop. They were more invested in the community and the people there. So those people are retiring, they're moving, and they're selling these homes off. So she says instead, these mobile park establishments. So now these investors are coming in and they treat it all the more such as a business. And so they don't have any attachment to the people that are there. So there's no remorse and no empathy for the people that live in these communities. And it's just like the renters that live like in some of the metropolitan cities. You see a lot of evictions. So a lot of what safeguards these people is having some kind of maybe someone that can advocate like housing protection of some sort. The moratorium was protecting people for some time, and then you had like organizations, housing organizations that are advocates, tenants' right advocates, and people just trying to protect people so that they, families and working lower income people could have a roof over their head, and especially during a time during the pandemic. And then this pandemic doesn't look like it's going away anytime soon. So even though they keep putting out all the stuff, when will it end? And it'll come to an end and all this kind of stuff. You never know. It's very uncertain because, one minute it seems like it's getting better, and then the next minute it drops back down to something worse. And so it's very uncertain times that we're living in. So she says that the company wouldn't be flexible with her, which that I can understand because it sounds just like how the developers come into these communities, and they're not as flexible unless you have maybe the owners or something like that that might see the circumstance for what it is, and then they might have maybe a couple of people who are very forthright or honest enough to say what their situation is, and they're able to hear them out. So she says instead, when she fell behind on her lot rent, Haven Park, they filed an eviction case against her right away, right out. So the people in Mobile Park are very vulnerable to losing their homes this way. So older homes like Hunt's can't physically survive being moved to another place because those homes have been sitting in that area for quite some time. And so they're built on a different way. They're not detached homes. They are mobile park homes. So if you lift those homes up, they probably just fall to pieces, I would believe, or they're older. The structure is older. So they need to be totally you have to redo the whole thing back up again. And so even when that's possible, it costs just to move that home an upward of $5,000, the money people don't have in that income bracket, that they're having trouble paying that lot rent. So over a relatively small sum, $480 dollars in the lot rent and the fees. And so she could quickly lose her home, she says, that she's lived in for decades. And so Haven Park actually has now filed to evict Mary Hunt 3 times. So they did this 3 times already. And so this woman, it's not like she's a criminal or she's somebody hanging out or she's making up stories. She's actually, struggling. She had been affected. I'm sure she'd been affected by this pandemic. And so the first two, she says that she borrowed money before those first 2 evictions. She borrowed money from friends and she worked through the weekends. So she had to work more than the hours that she already had and managed to catch up in time. So she caught up enough in time. But then earlier this year, she had got sick with COVID. See, here we go. She was affected by it. So she then fell behind on her rent, which was a legitimate excuse. It wasn't like she was making this thing up. And so Haven Park sued to evict her all over again. There's the insensitivity, not really listening to her situation and having empathy for her as a person, that she honestly was sick and she just couldn't, if you can't physically make the rent if you're sick with this COVID. And so we're hearing now they got this Omicron going on. So this is putting people behind again. So it's starting all over again. And so it's causing, homelessness to grow. And so she fell behind. So Haven Park sued her again. And so this time she wasn't able to catch up. So it was just too much for her. So sitting in her dining room over the summer with the court documents spread out all over the table, she broke down in tears, afraid of what was going to happen next. So I could be out next week without a place to live, she said. So the federal eviction moratorium for them in Michigan was about to expire. So Mary Hunt was running out of time and options. So she took care of her parents there before they had died. The bookcases are full of family pictures of her parents, the dishes and the keepsakes, all the things that she had she could just lose. Or she ended up having to put it in storage. That's if she can afford that rent. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to go with what I have on my back pretty much, she worried. And so everything will go to the road and there won't be anything that I can do about it. So Haven Park declined to interview for this whole article, but said in the statement that starting last year that the company adopted a new policy that it wouldn't raise the lot rent for more than $50 in a year. And so these lot rents for mobile park homes and manufactured homes can get expensive. And so especially when you're on a fixed income, and a fixed income is somebody that you're not really going to get a raise anytime soon, although that they did give Social Security a raise here in the state of California, I know, and I guess maybe in some other places. I'm hearing, because if it comes down from Washington, from the White House, then I'm sure it'll affect the other states as well. But that still might not be enough to make these payments. And so it says that these companies, it says they went ahead, Haven Park, within its legal rights, filed an eviction against Mary Hunt, and it is not alone. So other companies are buying up these mobile park homes like crazy. And so I'm just adding that in there. And one might think that this is part of the life in the competitive housing market, but landlords are entitled to their rent, of course. So that's the unfortunate part about this. But there's something else at play here as well. The mobile park home investors like Haven Park put a squeeze on the residents like Mary Hunt. They're getting help from an unlikely source. So guess who that source is? Federally backed companies with a core mission of helping to make home ownership affordable. Okay. And here's the home right here. So this is like a double wide home. See, it's on a flat foundation. It's not like, where it has the spikes in the ground. It sits up high on a slab of concrete. And so Mary's Hunt's new landlord, Haven Park Community, started raising her rent and tacking on these new fees. And in the beginning of the year, Hunt, she had fell behind when she had got sued for eviction. She got sick with COVID, so she couldn't go back to work to make that payment. So when private investors come to buy parks, mobile park homes, they raise the rent, sometimes 20, sometimes 50, sometimes 70%. So this is what an economist said. This is George McCarthy. He's the president of a nonprofit, Lincoln Institute of Land Policy. So he says that the reality, or what's really troubling of this whole situation to him, is that the government is basically turbocharging this whole trend. And so, yeah, our friendly government has something to do with this, unfortunately, but several industry insiders tell NPR that this is the way it works. So when a company raises the rents and the fees in the mobile park home, that increases the cash flow and makes the park more valuable on paper. Okay, so the company can then borrow more money against that property. So it's similar to refinancing a house. If it is if it has risen in value and pulling the cash out with a new mortgage. Okay, so you hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, you can refinance your home, and all this kind of stuff." So they push that on people, and so I think a lot of people was trying to do that, especially in the time of COVID. So the company borrows another, say, $3 million in cash in hand, repeats the cycle, and at different mobile park homes, potentially displacing more of the nation's poorest homeowners. Okay, so these are homeowners that are in jeopardy right now. We'll look at that as well. So it's not just the renters. Homeowners are in trouble, some of the low income. Because you could be like, have a house and be house poor. So some people are just barely making them house notes, and they barely eating, and they in a house, but they barely making it, so the loans often have very low interest rates because they are guaranteed by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the government-backed entities at the heart of the U.S. mortgage market. And so for me, I feel like this is all connected. They're all in it together on this, and it really is very bad because they protect the banks, they protect these companies like this, but the homeowners and the renters and the people that need these places to live as shelter are not protected, and you only have a limited amount of protections, and then when those protections run out, I mean, you're left struggling trying to figure out what to do. And so that's what a lot of people are faced with. I mean, what do they want to do? Make everybody homeless? And it seems like that's where his head is. Like, you're going to have a defining line of where you have people that don't really make that much money and they're doing the best they can, and they are workers. These are people that they're not really out there doing anything bad or anything. They're just working, but they don't make that kind of money to pay all that rent. And so they're being punished. You're being punished because you just don't make enough money. That's what it feels like. And so the loans often have very low interest rates, as they say. So they say that they provide very, very low cost debt for the investors. And so they get enough cash out to go buy additional parks. So this is what happens. So they get support. But the people that's living in these homes, you just get a limited amount of protection, maybe not even that. And so to be clear, this practice is not illegal. So that's the problem with it, which you think it should be, but it isn't. And so that's how they get away with this. So in fact, Haven Park executives touted that the benefit of these government-backed loans for the company in Fannie Mae online brochure. Okay, so Haven Park Community's president CEO Robbie Pratt said that Fannie Mae backed loans have supercharged our asset acquisition. Okay, so that is an unfortunate situation. So Pratt said the loans allowed the company to buy more than 100,000, I said 100 million actually, worth of mobile home parks in a single year. So they bought 100 million worth of mobile home parks. So beware of these mobile homes, Don't do it. Don't do it. If you don't have the money to pay that space rent, and then you still, it's like you still don't own your home, even though you paid for that mobile home, or you probably paid, you've been there for decades, you paid the home off. Now you get old, you got health issues, you can't do that much work, you're on a fixed income, that space rent keeps going up, your income don't go up. And so you get kicked out of a home that you've been living in, your family been living in, you maybe 2, 3 generations or whatever, and they kick you out like you never paid anything. That's sad. That's the reality of this situation. So what's ironic about this is that one of the missions of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac is to help preserve affordable housing. So that's the problem that we're faced with right now. Even in like communities that are in urban areas, they claim are urban areas or metropolitan areas, it's the same deal. I mean, renters, is a different, is a different situation. You're not a homeowner, but you're a renter, but you're still getting evicted, and you evicted because of no fault of your own, because of the situations that happened that having to do with COVID, similar to Mary Hunt. Only thing what makes it so sad is that these people actually thought they owned their home. You think, I own this home. Why are you doing this to me? So they're doing exactly the opposite by helping investors come in and make the most affordable housing in the U.S. less affordable all the time. Okay, so the company acknowledged NPR that some of the manufactured home parks are financed with such loans, but declined to offer any other specifics. So Haven Park says that it's important to note that sometimes when it buys a park, it prevents it from being turned into, for example, a shopping mall. Well, you might as well, because you don't want people to actually live there unless they can make the money and the payments, and you move them out when they get down on their luck, or if they're in a situation where they just can't afford it anymore. You're not very supportive of it. The days of the mom and pop, people that have owned these mobile park homes is ended. And so everybody is hit in the pockets. And so you got greedy people out there that they're all about the business of money, and they don't care about the livelihood of families. And so the company said in a statement, Haven Park's business model and the goal is to preserve affordable housing by purchasing manufactured home communities. Do you believe that? I don't. But the claim raises the eyebrows of affordable housing advocates, okay, which it should. So how can there be this goal, right? This is by a question of Elizabeth Goit, who says that Manufactured Housing Action, she's with this group that supports people who need to stay in these housing, people that have lived there all their life. So her nonprofit group helps organize residents and pushes for better protections for them in the state and the federal level. So in Haven Park, if they were, their goal was to preserve affordable housing, they would be working with these tenants, which they're not. Sounds familiar? I feel like they're all in it together. So to come up with the payment plan and actually accept the partial payments, but they don't do that, do they? So the last thing they would be doing, she says, is immediately filing for eviction as soon as the family falls a little bit, just a little bit behind, especially in the middle of a global pandemic. So NPR previously reported on a family with a 5-year-old son who lost their home 16 years during the pandemic after Haven Park evicted them. And so the company filed for eviction after the family fell just 1 month behind on their lot rent and owed, this is how much they owed, $621. But they evicted them. So the government could be helping mobile park home residents. So while Haven Park and other investors are buying up these mobile park homes with the help of the government back loans, the resident of the mobile park home in themselves aren't getting the sort of help that they should get, but they could be. So McCarthy and Goy both say that the Biden administration can fix this situation, but without the Congress acting on it, it could direct Fannie and Freddie to make it easier for the residents to buy their own communities, right? so that they won't have to deal with this type of stuff. But these days, more residents are trying to buy up their own parks as co-ops so that they can determine their rents and the fees for themselves. So help from the Fannie and Freddie Mac would be welcome news for the park residents like Charlie Smith, who retired in Brookside Village Mobile Park Home in Plainville, Massachusetts. I believe this is what it is, in 2013. So Smith, he was 80 years old, and he had a nice yard, a garden, a hammock for naps, and a parking spot for his Yamaha Royal Star motorcycle. And so he had proof of what's possible. But a few years ago, he received a letter. It said that the local family business that had owned that park was selling it to an investment firm, roughly in the amount of $4 million. And so he had, especially, and his neighbors had lower fixed incomes, and they feared the worst, of course. So here he is right here. So they weren't just concerned about it, but he recalls they were actually terrified, saying that they would turn to me and say, Charlie, if they had forced us out, where would we go? On a fixed income, these people were already like at retirement age or older. So we couldn't afford an apartment because, you know what apartments do. They take your money, suck it away too. So I don't defend none of these landlord companies and none of these people because they're all in it for the money. There is no love in there. They're not your friends. I'm just going to say that. Unless they were like these people that were previous owners that were mom and pop owners, or you have some kind of rental protections, or you have some kind of lot protections, or you have advocacy of some of these people, these groups that are going to come in and put these people in notice that this is wrong and they shouldn't be doing this to these people and kicking these people out when they have nowhere else to go. So we couldn't afford to go anywhere. Like, what the hell are we going to do? So that's what the question was to all these people. So here he is. See his mobile park home? It's a double wide home. So I know about these homes because in the South they have a lot of them. A lot of people live in these double wide mobile park homes, or they live in like a detached home. And a lot of them in the South, they've been buying up the homes. The developers, they come in, real estate agents, they show these homes. Developers, they do this flipping of the homes. A lot of homes, maybe they, like if somebody doesn't, the kids don't want the home or whatever, the home is in bad repair, they flip the home, they fix the home up, and then they sell it to these companies, and they hold the home hostage. So you become a renter of a home, and they do the same thing like they do in these apartments. It's all connected. They do the same stuff. So, but in Massachusetts, there's a law that gives mobile park home residents a chance to buy their park, right? When it goes up for sale. So that's if you can come up with this money, but it's called the right of first refusal. So only a handful of states such have these laws in place. And so that's why you read about this stuff, so that hopefully you have a chance to put your foot and get your feet wet and try to get in there and try to, fend off these developers, these people or these companies that come in and just try to swoop up all this property, because what they do is they're just in it for the money. They're not in it for the people. And so with the help of the nonprofit, they were able to pull this off. And so it wasn't easy, though. They had to match that $4 million offer. And the investor had on the table. So they had to match it. And so to do that, the residents had to agree to make a sizable increase on their lot rent so that the new co-op park could pay back the loan that it owed. So Andy Danforth works with the nonprofit ROC USA, helping residents buy their own parks. So that's what they've been trying to do to keep these people housed so that they won't end up being displaced people. And it was the point person on the ground of Brookside Village. And so he says that it was frustrating, but that's when the residents had tried to buy their own park like this, and they have to do that without any help from the federal government. So they have to keep them out of it because you know what happens with that. And Fannie and Freddie, they had to leave them out of the whole mix. And so that means the residents have to pay a much higher interest rate, of course, but therefore pay a lot more money over time when they buy their own park. And so I've done over like 50 co-op conversions, over $250 million. And so not a cent of it was backed by Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, Dartford says. So Voight, or say I say Voight with MH Action says that Fannie and Freddie should stop backing low interest rate loans to the investors buying up mobile park homes unless they are much stronger protections or they have stronger protections that's to figure out a path that preserves communities and protects the residents. And so she and McCarthy and Lincoln, the Lincoln Institute Land Policy, both say that Fannie and Freddie could be directing or directed to back low interest rate loans to residents to help them buy their own mobile park homes for in the form of co-ops. And so the U.S. government could tell Fannie and Freddie what to do and how to do it. And so McCarthy says actually make them honor their original mission to use innovative financing to preserve this really, really critical affordable housing stock. And so technically there is already a way for co-ops to get loans backed by Fannie and Freddie, but they can rarely qualify, McCarthy says, often because the down payment requirement is very, very high. And so here's Mary Hunt right here. And so you see like in the backdrop, you see the mobile park home. They're really nice. I mean, the thing is that she says here, I could be out next week without a place to live. So Mary Hunt worried that when NPR reporter visited, that Hunt doesn't own the piece of land, making Haven Park communities feel free to tell her to get out. And so I mean, look at the woman. Does it look like she's, just making the story up? I'm just saying off the top of my head. This woman is honestly, she's lived there for years, and I'm sure the residents around there know her. And so I'm sure that she's good for her word. And so, but look at how these companies do people, just regular working people that are trying to live. So Fannie Mae alone, for example, backed more than $5 billion last year in loans to mobile park homes and manufactured home communities, and none of that was for parks. That was for being turned into co-ops like Smith's. And so McCarthy's nonprofit is leading a new coalition. Okay, so it says of 20 affordable housing groups that are pushing for federal a regulator overseeing Fannie and Freddie to do more and helping the residents at mobile park home establishments. So the official with the regulator, Fannie or Freddie Mac, Federal Housing Finance Agency, says that a similar calls for Fannie and Freddie to find ways to make more loans to the residents forming co-ops and raised through the public comment process. And so we heard those appeals and are taking them to a serious consideration, and they want to look into those. So the NPR reached out to Fannie and Freddie Mac, and then both said that more recently they have been requiring more protections for the tenants in mobile park homes. So Freddie Mac said that in a statement that it is committed to supporting resident-owned communities. So Fannie Mae said that we are committed to expanding and strengthening tenant protections in manufactured home and housing communities. So as for Mary Hunt in Swartz Creek, Michigan, it looks like she's going to be okay for right now, but she had to apply for the pandemic rental assistance money, which is rent relief, which, many states have that. And that kind of helps to keep you a little protected because the people who are running those places, they have to agree to not kick you out. And so that's part of the deal because they're waiting on that money to come and pay your back rent. And so the NPR pressed Haven Park, the company, said that it wouldn't evict her and other residents waiting for that rental assistance help. And so now Hunt says that the payments were approved and her back rent has now been paid. That's the good news about that. But Hunt is still in a vulnerable situation. Her lot rent and her fees are still much higher than they were a few years ago. Okay? So she's hoping that she doesn't wind up facing this whole situation and in a snowball it happens all over again. So that's the issue with this. And so that's the reason why, like, I'm kind of comparing Mary Hunt's situation to what happens in the city. And when these big metropolitan cities, a lot of people, I believe, they move to the cities because the cities, they offer more job opportunities, and you would assume if you're living in the city you're going to get paid more money, and so the pay doesn't go up with the cost of living. And so that's what you hear, the term COLA, cost of living, allowance or whatever. It's just the pay doesn't go up. They still want to pay you this pay from the 1980s. And here we are in the year of 2022. And so the rents go up, the lot lands go up, but the pay at these jobs don't go up along with it. And so that's the big problem that we have in here. And so that's the reason why people like Mary Hunt and people like that we've seen in Detroit. I did a story about another lady who, there were fake landlords in Detroit. They're having a problem with that. People would want to have homes. They want to basically do the right thing. This woman, she wanted to have a home for her kids. If she passes away, she could leave it to her daughter and her grandkids. Now, what happens? You got these fake landlords. You got this going on with the mobile park homes. People could lose their homes they've been living in for decades. Renters, they were paying rent. Their hours got short, or they ended up with COVID. Now they can't work. Their test comes up positive. So you miss 5 days of work. So they shorten the days, right? So my question is to CDC. So in 5 days, is COVID going to walk away? I mean, I just don't believe it. I mean, if people are that sick, so more than likely those tests are going to read positive again, and the people are going to lose money, and then therefore that affects your livelihood. You're paying your rent, or paying your lot rent, or paying your mortgage, or whatever. And so if you're at the lower income spectrum, and it really does something to you. I mean, even if you, let's say you're able to make the rent and things where there was no COVID, you were doing fine, but now this is happening. It just changes everybody's situation. And so that is the reason why I think these stories are real crucial, because it's talking about what's happening right now. I mean, I can't say it enough that the people in these communities, their lives are important. Their lives matter. People in these homes, their lives matter. And so renters, mobile park home owners, people who are on a fixed income, people who are on, renters on a fixed income, people who are working these jobs and they don't get a pay raise right off. Working class people that maybe they're not making six figures. Our lives matter. And so, I mean, looking at this, you hear multiple stories like this, and it's heartbreaking because these people don't deserve really to be put out of their homes that they've lived in, or they work and they're honestly trying to make the rent and they just can't do it. And I mean, what's the saying? You can't get blood out of a turnip. So, I mean, what do you do in a situation like this? What these group of the advocates have done, they've tried to fight for the rights of the people so that they can have a secure and safe place to live. And we've heard all this talk on the news. Well, we don't want to evict people. We want to do a moratorium. We want to keep people in their homes, keep them safe. If there are more people displaced, then this virus could get worse. It has gotten worse because people have been getting evicted, unfortunately. So having said that, you know, having a place to live should not just be having it as a luxury, but it should be a right of the people.